Broadcast. Welcome to today's episode of the Zaner MarketCast, your one and only spot to keep up with all of the agricultural market news. My name is Joe Nikruto. I'm here with
Dan Hussey with Zaner Hedge, everyone.
Dan. How you doing today?
Good, Joe. How about yourself?
I'm terrific. We're here today to talk about, to work through, for me to fumble through some of these numbers. This is our pre-WASDE, pre-production episode. Today is Thursday, July 11th. Tomorrow,
Feels like a
Friday
Wednesday.
the 12th, right? Friday the 12th at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, we'll have these government updates on both U.S. crop production, Brazil corn and bean crop production. I think there'll be some Argentine numbers in there as well. Am I right?
Yeah. One of those anticipated changes on this report is those Argentinian numbers, which we'll go over here in a minute.
And so, spoiler alert, I don't, in the moments that I spent working through these numbers, I don't see the possibility for big surprise. Do you? Certainly it's always possible, right? But I don't necessarily see anything that can jump out here and say, oh, that really took us by surprise. Does that mean that since I don't see it, that the possibility most certainly exists?
Well, I feel like that's the Band-Aid was ripped off maybe a little bit with that surprise on that June acreage report. Quarterly grain stocks were what they were, but the acreage numbers coming in the June report higher than expected. I think we're going to be looking for some of that reflection here in the acreage number on the WASDE report. And remember, for those that aren't aware, we use that harvested acreage number here on the WASDE report for this upcoming number. So we're not looking for a major change in acreage just because we kind of already know what it was from June at that 83.3 million acre mark for corn. Now I'm fumbling. I can't remember what they said it was for beans, but it's not the big planted number that we were all shocked by. That's for sure.
86.1.
I think you're right. Yep.
Planted area, 86.1 million acres. Production, 4.4 something.
4.424 billion bushels there of beans expected in the 24-25 WASDE for July. And that comes in at a 51.9 average trade estimate, for the yield there. And that's pretty much in line with the 52 average yield they gave us already this year.
Let me break in here for just 1 second. We can't know where we're going unless we know where we've been this week. Let's just do quick numbers for Carter's sake and not to have to edit an hour and a half of Dan and I doing what we normally do outside of his purview, which is talking this to death. Let's find out where we're at so we can see where we'll be tomorrow. Corn, we opened the week. Certainly this is not a complete look because it's only Thursday. Corn, we opened the week at 423, and I'm talking Dees corn, Dan, 423. The high, 423 and 3/4. Low, 404. Last trade I saw was 410 and 3/4 today. That's down 13 and a quarter again on the week. Funds short an estimated 366,000 contracts. Technically, anything you see?
I mean, we're hunting out that contract low. I think that's 398.5. I want to say that's the all-time /contract low. That was made back in 2020 when this contract was, for December 24 corn was a liquid and not, it was just a blip in the eye of future traders, right?
And we had some discussion about whether that low would be valid still or if we would pick a different number. But that is technically speaking, that's the low.
That is the contract low. That's correct for this market. I like to think that we made a contract low yesterday with that 404 low, just because, hey, that's when volume's been trading. But speaking of volume, what's not a good look for this market right now is the bounce we had today and yesterday on diminishing volume here. Doesn't give me much of a leg to stand on in terms of, okay, is the trend reversing, right? Because the big red days have bigger volume bars than these small green up days. Not a good look for the bulls.
Funds showing no propensity to cover this position in front of this report. They're not nervous at all. Estimated to be short 366. Could be larger than that. Could be. How about beans?
Could be.
Open the week, 1124 and a half. Talking Nove beans here. And if you see, I think I'm looking at Nove beans, 1124 and a half. The high was 1125 and a half. Low 1061 and a half. Last trade 1067 and 3/4, down 62 on the week. Ouch. funds short an estimated 168,000 contracts. I would not be surprised to see that number larger. But there again, hunting for some sort of technical low. I don't know I can't see what it would be. Can you help me?
Yeah, I think at this point, I've for the soybeans, I've gone back to that corn to bean ratio, which comes in at about 2.6 right now. And that's very simply put, everybody. You take the price of the soybeans here, 1067 and 3/4, divide it by the 410 and 3/4 price of corn, and you get 2.6. Now, if you were to chart out that corn to bean ratio, it can get as wide as 3 at times in some very spectacular markets where beans are, demand for beans are a driving factor. In fact, it had been there over the last couple of years, and it can get as narrow as around 2.0. It's gone below that at times before too, when corn is generally in more demand relative to beans. Those numbers play into, a couple things. One, the relative acreage, right, that we've had the two crops been planted this year. That can, of course, be a deciding factor on the profitability for your farm to plant which crop at times, depending on the ratio of their valuation and their price. But generally speaking, if we just assume that this 2.5 to 2.6 ratio is going to stand, and if corn goes to make new lows, 20-cent drop in corn to take us to 380 corn, that's $1 drop in bean from where we're at right now down to around 955, excuse me. So, an argument to be made that until this weather came through this last week, Joe, the barrel rains with this hurricane, we might have been holding on to a little bit of weather premium in the soybeans. That ratio was about 2.65 sometime last week. Now it's getting below at 2.59. So it's showing me that beans are taking that premium out and coming back to quote unquote more fair value with corn at this time. And I think that can be chalked up to the idea that we were still hopeful with a lot of time between now and August, or more time with corn into its pollination season right now. If we're getting rains, that means there isn't going to be much of a need for weather premium to be held on to in the soybeans. From a technical standpoint on the chart, we got rejected from that 18-day moving average here early last week. Could we see a bounce back up into it? Sure. But the reality is that these are markets that are just continue to make lower lows and lower highs and are still entrenched in their downtrends.
And so, and that's what brings us back to these numbers tomorrow. Mm-hmm. The way that these numbers are set up, they're set off the June acreage survey.
That's right.
There is very little here in looking at what Karen had to say and a couple other sources. Very little here to suggest that maybe they're going to make any change to yield estimates. And so in June, those numbers came in off of survey and USDA modeling, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So we don't necessarily have as of yet what I would consider to be a perfectly accurate representation of planted acreage.
Right.
That's debatable.
No, I think that's very debatable here. They're not addressing those unplanted acres for both from June for both corn and beans. But the assumption by the USDA is that they will get planted, right? But that leaves us all in the market to still have the argument for how much is actually going to be there at the end of the day. If we know that there was, the potential for acreage shift from corn to beans in some of the northern states, there's going to be some, unintended consequences of no plant. But we will get a update, usually by washed out acreage that were planted that have been lost or, hadn't seen much of a growth there when those big rains came through Iowa. But the revised acres in September, once they start getting the county and crop insurance forms, that's where we'll start to see a more solid number and one that we can really hang our hat on, because at that point, there's money behind the number, I like to think, right? The insurance companies have audited this. These aren't, just survey estimates that you hate to say it, but could be fudged or even lied about.
Or not even turned in yet at the time of the
True.
At the time of the number. It spoke to some people that said they had not made their way yet to the office to certify those acres. And so, again, certainly some debate to be had here while we work with the numbers that the USDA gives us. In corn, what do we have? An average yield number of 180.8?
That's correct. The trade range from 179 to 181. This is, basically in line from those June estimates from the I forget what the World Agricultural Forum or whatever that the USDA does, that they came out with a 181 estimate. That puts us at a production number of about 15.063 billion bushels. And again, that's off of the harvested acreage number here of about 83.3 million. So there could be a shift in that harvested acreage a little higher, perhaps, if they wanted to take it up, because they surprised us with that higher planted acreage number. But generally speaking, we already kind of know that 83.33 or 83.4 million acres is that peg number there for to get us to that production.
And that's the number that we're watching then. Not that we anticipate any change, but maybe where there could be, I don't know, it could be a surprise. So that'll be a number to be watched.
Yeah, and to that point, because we know that the USDA will sometime in maybe August, they could do it in August if they wanted to, based off those insurance numbers, but we will get that updated acreage in September. There's very likely not going to be an acreage change here. We know what those planted acres are from the June report. It's really a question of yields on the US balance sheet, and I guess some of the other things like corn cut for silage and stuff, but I highly doubt that they're going to do any adjustments there. We've had a USDA that's generally kind of kicked the can when given the opportunity.
Yeah. Carry out numbers, trade average for corn 2023, 2024, 2049 for 2023 versus the June number, which was 2022. The 24-25 average 2312 versus the June 2102. So slightly larger in old crop, but a little bit of a jump, 2312 to versus 2102 in 24-25, huh?
Yeah, it definitely was there, and sometimes it makes you wonder what the pencil pushers are doing, but they have their rhymes and reasons.
And ADM, who we watch, right? ADM analysts expect no change to U.S. exports for corn or beans, right? And for beans. Planted acres, 80, where are we at? Yield, 51.9.
So, yeah, with a 51.9 and a 4.424 billion production, we're at a planted acres number, and you just simply divide those of 85.24 million acres is what's anticipated on this report based off of our yield and production assessment. So again, 51.9 bushels an acre average yield guesses for tomorrow's report with the
trade range 51 to 52.
Billion. Yep, and that's pretty much in line with that 52 number for the yields we had gotten back there from our forum estimates back in June.
June number, yeah. Yep. Same thing with production, 4.450 versus 4.24.
Correct.
With a range for 33.5, 43.6. No change in exports for beans. Carry out number 2324 for beans. Trade estimate for tomorrow is 355 versus last month's 350, slightly higher. But 2024, 2025 trade estimate, carry out number 449 versus last month's 455. So they're dropping the 2024, 2025 carry out. That's a function of the acreage, right?
Yes, I believe so. Because again, we can't be saying that they're disappearing here with overzealous exports. There's really no other way to slice that cake.
It'd be interesting to see what happens with exports. Certainly, as we have brought the price down as dramatically as we have in the last couple weeks in corn and beans, we have got to be getting more attractive in terms of exports.
You would imagine so. I haven't calculated out the number, of how we compare to South American pricing, but we're getting towards the tail end of their export season. Prices are very attractive, if you ask me, compared to where we were 6 months ago, a month ago, or even 2 years ago, right? We're at the lowest levels in half a decade now for corn and beans. If they weren't cheap enough for you yesterday, imagine that we're getting there here today or very soon.
And to that end, a little nibble from the Chinese in new crop beans. First official new crop bean export sale posted, right? There's a pretty decent sized chunk in unknown. I can't remember what that number was, but yeah,
but even the weekly exports here, coming in with 191 million tons 191,000 tons of week over week exports, starting to chew into that number a little bit, where otherwise, that was just goose eggs. We just saw big zeros there.
Something is better than nothing.
Exactly. And okay, maybe it's the start of something, and maybe after tomorrow's report, we'll see things pick up a little bit. And certainly, you gotta also kind of consider, and I was talking with another client here today, that, hey, prices of corn and beans are kind of hunting out, certainly for corn right now. I mean, we're hunting out, the lows of the last 10 years right now, pretty much. You go below $4 corn, you're starting to get into value areas when you look back on the, monthly and weekly charts of the last 10 years. So yeah, if they weren't attractive prices before, boy, they better be now.
Yeah, you got to be a buyer at some of these levels. I mean, some folks, whether they're stockpiling or whether they're chewing through it the way that American ethanol is, right?
Right.
I mean,
and we're, of course, referring to the commercials and the exporters here, not like saying, hey, go out and speculatively buy corn here when we say you got to be a buyer. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And so we briefly touched on Brazilian numbers. I don't know that there's anything in here that really between CONAB and the USDA, they kind of have it surrounded, don't they? CONAB coming in lower than the USDA. USDA anticipated to maybe lower their numbers tomorrow to get closer to CONAB. CONAB came up today, if I remember correctly.
They're going to meet in the middle, right? Yeah, they're going to meet in the middle here. So we got Argentinian corn coming in to be almost 2 million metric tons, lower than the June report at 53, expecting 51.07 to be exact, but 51 million metric tons there from Argentinian corn production. Brazilian corn production looking to come in about 1 million metric tons lower at 121.3 compared to 122 in the June report. So like Joe said, starting to see those numbers start to come back to the meeting in the middle somewhere as they kind of need to. But soybean on the soybean side, not much of a change there. The only real reduction we're expecting is the Brazilian number. We're coming in at 151.75, down from 153 in June. Again, both of those levels kind of, or both of those soybean numbers are a little rather muted, I should say. But hey, 3 million metric tons lower of South American production for corn. It makes you wonder if one, that gives a good reason for China and other buyers here to start sniffing out the U.S. markets a little bit more.
Absolutely. As the value is there, you would think that they have to really be giving it a serious look, and hopefully the export window stays open and we can get some business done.
Yeah.
Well, we've got it covered. Corn and beans. Looked at some technical levels. Looked at the numbers that certainly have caught our eye. If anybody thinks that we missed anything or there's other numbers that they're looking at, leave us a note in the comments, right?
Absolutely. Like and subscribe if you've seen what you've seen here today. Do check out links in the comment section of this video to our daily ag call-in where you can hear from our one and only Ted Seifried and get a update right on all of the news and action that is happening with corn, wheat, and beans on a daily basis. And like Joe said, the price is free. So please drop us a like or comment in the and subscribe below. And we will be back with you tomorrow for after WASDE report recap and as price action develops. Take care, everyone.